Welcome to Who's This For, a podcast about creating with intention. I talk with artists, entrepreneurs, and media makers about connecting with their audience by focusing on a single person. You create music, brands, experiences, or stories. This is the podcast for you. Well, thank you for joining us on another episode of Who's This For, podcast about creating with intention for an audience of one. I am so glad to be with you today. I love doing this podcast. I love communicating with creative people about this topic. So it's such a joy. And today's episode is a special joy because I have on the show someone I've been talking with for the last, 19 years, give or take, about being creative and about thinking creative ideas. And so I am thrilled to welcome today Mr. Matt Banker. How's it going today, Matt?
That's good. It's fun to be here.
I should say, I actually ripped this first question off from your podcast. But to get started, can you give the audience a little background CV on what you're all about, what you do, how you make stuff in this world?
Yeah. So in college, I studied fine arts. So I have a degree in sculpture, specifically like conceptual installation sculpture. So obviously now I do marketing for accounting firms because that's a really direct link from what I studied. I took a weird winding route to get here. I spent some time actually as like a youth pastor. I spent some time running a coffee shop and as an art teacher. And I guess just through multiple kind of career startups, and I kept finding I didn't find exactly what I wanted to do, other than I really enjoyed helping people figure out and solve their problems, but like mostly the strategy side. And then I get to leave and they have to actually like figure out how to do the thing to solve the problem. So that's a consultant. And that's basically what I wanted to do, but I hadn't studied anything in that area. I found my way into marketing. I got connected with Donald Miller and StoryBrand, which is like a messaging framework. And they do a bunch of workshops and things. And that was kind of my borrowed authority to get started as a bit of a marketing consultant. And then over the last 8 years or so, since I've been running my own business, I've just developed a lot of those skills. And a couple of years ago, we pivoted really hard into just specifically working with accounting firms. I think that's apropos for this conversation. We really have been on a journey just to narrow our message and who I'm talking to specifically to a smaller and smaller group in this accounting firm niche at this point.
So with this like really cool broad journey to get you here today, from doing the visual art to working in the ministry to working coffee shops and stuff, do you see a through line that has helped you develop some of your basis for how you communicate?
Yeah, going back to my college studies, in art school, you spend a lot of time critiquing work. You're talking about famous artists' work and you're critiquing your own and your classmates' work. And I realized in art school, those conversations are like, yeah, could you say this with like more nuance? It's a little bit too like on the nose and direct. I hear this is what I think you're trying to communicate, but maybe make it more interesting. And in marketing, it's actually a lot of the same skill set, but the output is the opposite. It's, can you make this more direct and more on the nose and less nuanced and like more clear? And sometimes that can be a little bit boring, I think, from a creative standpoint, but the actual process and the thinking that goes through it is very similar. You're trying to understand, what are you trying to communicate and are you doing it effectively? And how can you make it more effective in this particular context, which is usually at this point, marketing instead of art. And so you try to communicate different things, but a weirdly similar skill set.
Yeah, my thing with marketing, and I do a little bit. I've always noticed that when I'm in my editing phase, it's how much can I strip myself out of this message? And that's always been an interesting thing behind that. Do you find that with marketing that it is a lot of really becoming hyper aware of what a lot of people will understand, but at the same time, what resonates with a single person.
Yeah, it's always this balance. I think the way that I am often thinking about it is I do want less of me in certain ways. Like I really want the focus to be putting myself in the prospect or the client, the customer's shoes. But you have to balance it with being very human. Like people, especially if you're a smaller business, people want to connect with other people, and that's your advantage as a small business, is that there's like real humans behind your company and behind what you do. So you don't want to strip it away so far that it just seems like bland corporate speak. But the way that shows up is really, you want clarity, but you want it spoken in a way that as if you're having a conversation with a real person. And so the closer you can get that to being like, I have an actual person in mind that I'm speaking to, instead of trying to hit this like broad amalgamation of all the types of clients that you could possibly be talking to. That's what you want to do. And I don't know, you do really have to understand who your audience is. If you try to speak to everybody, it just doesn't resonate. And so even if you have a little bit more of a specific voice or more of that, the like one-to-one perspective as you come into it, if this thing, I sometimes like the closest or the fastest way to get from point A to point B is not a straight line. You have to come at it in a roundabout way. So strangely, rather than trying to speak in a broad sense to everybody, which feels like the most direct route, you know, you're going to get the most ears listening to you or the most eyes on your content. If you speak in a more specific way, almost to one person, it actually does resonate with a broader group of people. And so it's a little counterintuitive, but you take this sort of roundabout way that seems less efficient, and it actually turns out to be more effective.
I love that. You know, you kind of, you're talking about roots and stories, and you mentioned it earlier. Do you want to explain some of what story brand is and because it seems like that's actually dovetails nicely into what we're talking about right
Yeah.
now.
So I'll mention it. I mentioned that I was a youth pastor for a while. I'm not really very religious anymore, but from that world, there was this like Christian memoirist who took a weird hard turn into writing about business and marketing. His name was Donald Miller, but I was aware of him.
Yeah, he went from writing about,
Yeah.
sorry, I just want to point out, he went from writing to listening to Annie DeFranco in his upstairs apartment to writing this treatise on marketing. I wanted to interject that because it is quite a swing.
If people knew Donald Miller back then and know him now, like you'd be surprised how he made that journey. But essentially, he had one great idea, right? And really it wasn't his idea. He repackaged this idea of using the hero's journey and as a framing device to help people write for marketing purposes. So he talks about it as it's marketing, but really it's copywriting and messaging. And this idea, which on one hand is really simple, but it can be very powerful when you have very simple ideas, is that no one is looking for a hero to solve their problems. They actually see themselves as the hero, and they're looking for someone as a guide to help them on the way. And so in the hero's journey idea, you got a hero who has problems, and they meet a guide who gives them a plan and a process to follow, and that leads to like success or failure. And if you take those ideas and then you just fill in each of those steps along the way with your kind of marketing perspective or the things that are related to your business, it actually really resonates with people because people like that. And what it does is it gets you out of the position of thinking like, what I have to do is tell a really compelling story about myself or my business. And it puts you into the headspace of, oh, I actually just have to tell how I fit into their story. And so again, you're centering the customer and you're trying to put yourself, why would they want my help? Or what do I have to help them, instead of trying to be like, hey, look at all the things that I'm really good at. You should hire me, or you should buy my product because it does all these things. Instead, you focus on their problems. And it's like a human level communication tool. People care a lot more if you care about them than if you're trying to pump yourself up. And so you're a little more humble, you're a little bit more in the background, But again, it's this roundabout way of like when you take yourself out of the focus and you put your customer as the focus, it also works better. I think that's maybe a common theme is I like finding these little tricks or frameworks that feel a little counterintuitive, but it's what, if you go the other route, it's what everybody hates about marketing, right? One neat trick to solve your problems, or like these pyramid
Right.
schemes and things are all built around this like flash and like trying to it's overly salesy and it's slick and it's we're gonna convince people by like blunt force of how important and good this is. But you land on a landing page that's scrolls long that's been like optimized for this funnel thing and it just feels gross. So I found this was a way for me to be a little bit more authentic in the approach that I took to marketing, and it's been really helpful.
I like that. There's been a few times in my life where I thought I was getting into marketing with people, and it was more like, oh, let's do this SEO writing where you jam every word possible in here to get Google to find this article, and it's really nothing. And so I appreciate that your approach has a lot more empathy towards the people experiencing the media.
Yeah, part of it is that I think sometimes I think I'm the world's like most pessimistic and skeptical marketer. Like there's all kinds of things where I feel like marketing is just ruining the internet and making like experiences for everybody in general just a lot worse. And there's all this stuff that like my industry, it really sucks actually. And part of it is, like you said, is I think that there's very little empathy and really just, hey, what can we accomplish through sort of brute force, kind of spammy tactics. And I really hate that stuff personally, right? I get too many phone calls and spam emails and all this stuff. So I don't want to be like that, but you balance it with, yeah, but, and some of this stuff works. Like email marketing works, even though I hate getting so many emails in my inbox. And like social media is a good channel for a lot of companies in terms of selling their product, even though I wish there was fewer ads and like product pitches on all the social media sites that I use. At least like my own small contribution to making it a little bit more palatable is like, all right, let's remember it's like actual humans and try to treat them like people with a little bit of empathy and respect, and not just like marks that we're trying to squeeze another dollar out of.
Oh, so true. And this is another thing I attribute to you is me using LinkedIn a little bit more, because like honestly, for years I hated it because that's all it felt like. Either people like glad handing their skills or writing something about, oh, how a trip to the park taught me about SEO rankings or something like that.
Yeah.
But I guess from following you and following people you follow, I have seen at least that there's some people trying to do a good job on there.
For me, this is like personal brand building, which is a way. I've never been great at sales, but I've been really good at the feedback I've gotten is good at explaining things. And so for me, the best way to get my own clients and to build trust has been the pull back the curtain approach, where I like, hey, here's what's actually going on behind the scenes. Here's how marketing companies are charging for their services, or here's like what you need to know about how these different things actually work. And rather than people call up and be like, how are you going to do this? It's proprietary knowledge, secret marketing stuff. But if you hire me, it's definitely going to work. It's all the things that don't work in marketing for your thing. And here's the things that we think might work, but it might actually be a complete failure. What they really appreciate, the way I put it, is my job is to give you true news, not necessarily good news. And then we're going to figure this thing out together to do something that works. And I think people really appreciate that like level of honesty and transparency without trying to like hide the ball, which marketers are so good at creating charts that make their work look effective and important, rather than focusing on, yeah, but is this actually making a difference for the business? I don't know. I feel like this whole conversation is me being like, man, I'm a marketer and marketers sure suck, don't they?
No, but I mean, I think that I think that you're saying some things that a lot of us have thought about, and a lot of why, like, I saw marketing as a dirty word for years, living adjacent in the like broadcast world, like, which, yeah, I mean, it's not a secret that most broadcasters end up as marketers anyway. But I think a lot of us, like, when you start, you think it is just trying to sell the service plan on a TV at Circuit City in the year 2000. Like, you know, it's not about the consultative model where you are helping your client achieve their goals. So I appreciate this. I think it's as the kids say, fire, in my opinion. Oh, thank you. One thing that we've talked about, and one thing that you talk about on marketing for accounting firms, the podcast that I'm glad to work on, is niching, and niching very specifically. Like in the accounting field, we talk about, niching to like toy car companies or something, because accountants who work for toy car companies maybe know a little bit about acquisitions a little bit more, and sourcing, maybe tariffs and stuff. I don't want to get into tariffs in this, but that's just one example. What led you to niching into accounting firms?
So my last name is Banker, right? And so at first I don't know if this is true. We were getting a lot of accounting firm clients and financial advisors and like investment funds. And so I thought, all right, if you see my name in a whole list of marketers and the last name is Banker, and the company is called Banker Creative, I think that helped us a little bit. We started getting like money related clients, and they were good clients, right? Accountants have money. They tend to be like good with their own budgets, and they pay their bills on time and all of that. But at first we tried to niche down into, let's work with financial advisors and accounting firms. And what we found is that like accounting firms provide like bookkeeping and payroll services for business, and financial advisors are looking for individuals who have a bunch of money to advise them. And the marketing tactics required, even though they like seem close as like business types, are entirely different. And the conferences that they go to are entirely different conferences, and the podcasts that they listen to are entirely different. So for me, they felt similar from my perspective, but when I dug into it, they weren't. And so we decided to niche down even further. We actually launched a sub brand so that we could just focus on accounting firms without turning off all of our more generalist clients. We had nonprofit and trades clients and financial advisors and things like that. But it was a process, right? We found that a certain type of businesses were paying attention to us more. And then we found these are some things that we can really do. One of the things I discovered was, so like we worked with a lot of nonprofits, and nonprofits are great, but nonprofits are generally staffed by lots of like art majors, English majors, history majors.
Hey, I worked in nonprofits.
Yes, Scott, what did you study in? It's the deal, right? You're like a creative person, good writing. You probably recognize good design. And what that means is that the creative team, like working with you, like you've got opinions, and you're a little more picky about what things look like and sound like and the writing. That's not bad. That's great feedback. What we found with accounting firms though, where they were like, I don't know if that looks good. I don't know how to write anything. Like, we just trust you. Mm-hmm. So they really valued the perspective that we brought because it was different from the skill set that they already had. And so it didn't feel, they valued it so that they would pay more. That was like a real advantage in business. But also it just made things go faster because they trusted our perspective. And there's a lot of things, let's be honest, marketing for accounting firms, we're not curing cancer and we're not painting Guernica, right? This is not the most important work in the entire world. And sometimes like good enough is good enough, and getting things published and out there is more important than getting it perfect. And so that was an advantage, that there was a lot of trust there, that we could work quickly with those clients, and that they really valued our guidance at a higher level than more of our clients who came from a bit more of a creative perspective themselves.
Oh, I get that. So how does having that freedom help you more effectively get the accounting firm's messaging out there?
One of the things that I've really about niching down is, okay, there's a couple principles. If you give a niche attention, you'll get attention back. So on one level, just choosing a lane can be really beneficial if you're looking for clients. You just say, hey, this is who I work with. And then they're like, oh, that's great. I fit your criteria. That makes me more willing to work with you. The other thing, though, is you build a deeper level of insight. I was afraid of niching down because I thought it would be boring. I liked working with lots of different companies and solving different problems for every client that came in the door. What I realized when I niched down was that I had been solving the same shallow problem for like different industries, every time I worked with a new client. And so it was like doing the same thing over and over again. And with accounting firms, I uncovered deeper and deeper problems. And so we were dealing with more interesting things, more impactful things, and a more comprehensive solution. And so we were able to develop our expertise and develop insight just because we kept working with some similar clients again. And that was actually, I was surprised at how not boring it ended up being, because there was depth by focusing on one niche. Whereas before there was like breadth of working with different companies, but it was always messaging and websites. And that was really satisfying, but I don't think I would have known that going into it. In fact, it was a big fear that I would be bored.
Yeah, and I think there's always a fear of, for me anyway, I'll say this because I'm still very broad. I still have that apprehension that if I go more specific, that I cut off business, and that's scary because I like more business.
Well, and that's why we launched a sub brand rather than like just trying to pivot with our main brand. That felt a little safer. Like, all right, let's test this out. We'll just launch a different website and we'll like operate under this different thing. And that means we don't have to turn off the faucet of all of that like generalist stuff that was coming in the door. But I'll say I had to personally shift to be the like marketing for accounting firms guy on social media. Our company, we still got referrals and people knew about me through my personal network, but publicly, I really did shift my persona, started following, like I found a group of people. This was 5 years ago before Elon took over, but there's a group called Tax Twitter. There's just a bunch of accountants and CPAs who used a tax Twitter hashtag that would talk with each other. And so I just followed those people and I started participating in those conversations and used LinkedIn to find people who were accounting firm owners. And I really changed my profiles to be really specific. So it was clear someone clicked through, they'd know that I worked with people like that. But yeah, we didn't want to shift. I didn't want to shift everything all at once because I wasn't sure it was going to work. It turns out it did. And that was like, it was one of the better moves that I've made in my career. But there was a lot of fear and apprehension going into it.
I get it. That's good to hear how that worked in your journey. And I do like that publicly you became a different brand, but still privately we're open to everyone. So that makes a ton of sense. Okay. We're to the dirty secret part of the show. This is the deep, dark, dirty secret part of the show. I'm adding to the branding of this segment. Yes. And this show has segments. See, we were in the chat part. Now we're in the deep, dark secret segment. Pretty big, huh? But for your deep, dark secret, how are you using AI, or what's one or two ways you're using AI to help your clients?
Yeah, let me just frame it this way first. My philosophy on AI is that I want to use it as extensively as possible to take care of like busy work or things that just take a lot of time so that I can spend more time in conversation with my clients. But I think that I want to pick my AI battles strategically so that it frees me up to be more human in other areas. And so I am a big user of AI. I'm also skeptical about it. I hate it sometimes. I swear a whole lot more often because I use ChatGPT pretty regularly and I'm not happy with the output that it's giving me. I feel like my language has gotten a lot worse and I have to watch myself around my kids more. And it's all because of ChatGPT.
Oh,
but
wow.
Here, I'll give you two things that I'm doing. So one, I built an AI avatar of myself. I fed it all of the data from a bunch of podcasts and strategy calls that I've done and articles I've written and other things that I've created, videos and things. I use a platform called Delphi.ai. And they made it really easy just to feed it. Here's everything about MapBanker, everything that MapBanker has said and done. And so I'm using that to create a Matt GPT version of myself for my clients and my team members to be able to ask. I have a deeper expertise than most on marketing for accounting firms. And so when people ask it, they're going to get Matt's version of this rather than like the generalized internet answer that they'd get if they just went to ChatGPT. And so it's not a perfect version, but it's a way for me I offer it for free to some of my prospects. It's like a lead generator in a sense. People start to get access to some of my thinking, and then they hopefully will come back around and hire us because they were convinced that the robot version of me was, I don't know. We'll see if it works really well or not, but it's something we're testing out.
That's a really cool repurposing of content that you've been creating all these years then.
Well, and the creepy version of this is someday when I'm dead, people can still talk to Matt GPT and it'll sound like me.
Right. Whoa.
Yeah,
creepy.
It sounds like my voice. There's a voice version of it and a text version. It doesn't get the tone and cadence exactly, but it's in that uncanny valley space, I think.
So I've experimented with yours, and I actually like that the voice is like slightly off because it helps me know that it's in general your ideas, but I don't feel like you're duping me
like
or
the
something.
B- version of Matt's ideas.
Those are still A+ in my book.
We do a lot of strategy calls with our clients, and so we build a ChatGPT project for every client, and so we record the calls and generate a transcript, and we feed all the transcripts into one singular project. So then when I go back and we do copywriting or have social media strategies and things, we can use that project to reference. And so if I hand it off to a designer or a copywriter, they have access to all of my conversations through a chat window, and they can say, hey, did Matt and the client talk about this or that? And they can get an answer directly from a customized little project, and it helps us share that information across the team. So that's the other really exciting thing that we're doing.
That internal part is amazing. Wow. Just to round back to something you mentioned at the start of this award-winning segment, but to come back to it, you were talking about how you like to personally use AI to do a lot of we'll say steps 1 through 5 of a 20-step process, steps 1 through 12, whatever. This isn't really a question. This is just more something I've been thinking about a lot lately is we're able to do that and evaluate the output because we've been doing those steps 1 through 7 for 1 to 2 to 3 decades, depending on how old you are. What does this mean for new people entering the working world? Because a lot of this is understanding the underpinnings and those steps.
Yeah, I think this is a huge challenge that we don't have a great answer for. The AI is part of it. The accelerated work from home, remote work thing is also contributing similarly. I think it's a really hard time for entry-level people to get the experience that they need. And I feel bad for it. And as a person who hires creatives, I'm going to be really cautious about people who grew up just using AI and assuming AI is generating good stuff. I think the most important skill that a creative person has is taste before the ability to create, recognizing good writing. If you're a copywriter, your real skill isn't that you can type good words into a keyboard. It's that you can recognize good copy. And so you can use AI to help you come up with ideas, but you need to have that experience to evaluate it. And so I am worried that younger entry-level people aren't getting the reps of just having to work it through in their brain to learn and recognize why copy works and why it doesn't. You learn that by manipulating it, doing the work. The easy way to say it, we focus a lot on writing, but writing is thinking. And so if you're not writing, you're not developing your thinking any topic and write. My advice is like for entry level people, younger people in their career, you really got to spend time doing the work, even though it's frustratingly slow. The other thing just in that is I was at a conference one time and I was sitting with a group of other agency owners, and two of them were saying, yeah, I won't hire anyone who graduated after, I think it was 2018 or 2019, because they never had the opportunity to work in a workplace and learn expectations and how to do this work from people who are further in their career. And so I only hire like experienced people and people who graduated earlier because they know they can work from home remotely and I don't have to worry about them. Anyone who's graduating now, I really worry that they don't have the skill set to actually operate within the system. And I was thinking about it, that I get it. What's going to happen in 10 years when a bunch of those people are retired and you need to replace them and you don't have anyone with experience because you haven't figured out a way to do the training and the coaching and the mentoring that people need.
Yeah, that goes exactly. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. It's weird, when we were growing up, people who were in their 40s were starting to become dinosaurs in various industries. I shouldn't say dinosaurs, but because of technology so quickly expanding, there was that sort of curve there. I've noticed as I've gotten older, maybe this is overconfidence, but I've noticed that really being born in that millennial range or Gen X to millennial range is an advantage in society in a way it wasn't, again, 20 years ago. It's just interesting to me.
Yeah.
I've also noticed one thing that's really cool with technology. I'm working with some churches who tend to have parishioners who are a little more seasoned in their careers themselves, but I've actually noticed more technical adept from them as I've been working with them, and that's been really cool. So I don't really have a follow-up to that. That's just something I like.
Yeah, society, more or less, you're not going to see quite the like technology gap as people get a little older. More and more of everyone is going to be pretty comfortable using different tech, and certain tech is for sure easier to use these days. That's an interesting observation.
And this is what I've learned is the best question in a podcast. Before we go, do you have anything else you'd like to say to my gorgeous listener out there? My one listener, because each listener is one.
In the context of this podcast, I think what I'm thinking about is the person who is a creative type that's trying to make a living. And I think that the thing that we've touched on it, but the thing that I would tell them is you need to be curious. Don't get locked into thinking about like all AI or no AI, or be a little bit flexible, but make sure that you're creating space for a true like creative practice, whether that's within your like industry. Like if you're a graphic designer, you need to spend time designing things with your hands. If you're a copywriter, you need to spend time writing without using ChatGPT. Do come up with something that you care about and have a real creative practice, because that is going to be, and a slow creative practice. I think that is going to be something that is going to set you up for success in the long term, where taking the shortcut of using all these technologies all the time feels easy now, and it's going to be bad for you in the future. So that's what I'm thinking about. That's what I would say.
That's great advice. Yeah, make shit before you have ChatGPT do it for you.
100%.
And I think that's actually the first swear on this podcast.
You're not Chase,
Matt,
so I'm not going to swear.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you didn't swear on I've had 0 swears on this program, even though I've had a couple guests that I think stumbled over not swearing. I stumble over not swearing occasionally, so it's all a part. Like, I definitely, with being someone without kids, I have to remember, especially with a lot of my friends having younger children now, I have to remember, like, oh, there are actually things that are inappropriate to say, contrary to my whole experience prior to now. Buddy, thank you so much for this chat today.
This was so fun. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
And Folks, check out Marketing for Accounting Firms. It's got a great host and a brilliant editor. And that's it for this episode of Who's This For? Remember, whether you're creating music, brands, experiences, or stories, it's all about focusing on that one person, you. I'm Scott Morfitt, and you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time on Who's This For?